Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tiefling Talks. How was that? Was that good? Good starting point.
That was a ton of bass, but yeah.
I'll try.
Holy hell
I'll
yeah.
drop it down a little bit,
Just a tad.
just a little bit. Ooh, nope. There we go. Now I'm just in the. Oh, nope. It's bouncing into the red. All right. I'll try to keep it low. But yeah, this is Tiefling Talks, the podcast with me, your host Gage, and then my co-host Brock.
Hello, everybody.
And yeah, it's kind of a D&D podcast, kind of a daily life podcast. We're going to talk about a little bit of everything, primarily D&D, obviously by the name Tiefling Talks. But bring a little bit of our outside lives and other types of media in as well to kind of fill in the gaps and the kind of dead space that we don't have anything planned for.
Yep, bring a little bit of reality into your fantasy reality.
Always, always, always. So first, I guess we'll start by introducing ourselves. Brock, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, I'm Brock. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition for going on 6 years now. Started with a really homebrewed campaign that gave me the wrong flavor and sought to set it right and had good experiences ever since.
Nice, nice. Got any outside hobbies that you want to share or anything?
Yep, outside hobbies would definitely be motorsports, mainly car and motorcycle related. Have not ridden MotoGP, but I do ride '01 GS6R 750. Had a couple of drift cars in the past. A lot of fun stuff. Um, Other than that, I'm pretty uninteresting aside from D&D. That's about my redeeming quality.
Hey, everyone's somewhere, and everyone's got passions in certain places, and the more honed your passions are, the more you've got to talk about. So I don't mind that at all.
Absolutely. Speaking of passions, where do you lie on that spectrum?
Right. So my name is Gage. I have been playing Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition for only about 3 years now. Um, and honestly, most of that experience has been with Brock here because we actually started out a Friday session campaign together, and that's been going on for what, we're working on our third year.
Yep, we're about 2 years and 3 months in right now.
Yep. So that's kind of where my bulk of experience lies. A little bit longer than a year ago, I actually ran a year-long campaign on Sundays for Brock and a few of my friends from that campaign that I play on Fridays, where I was the DM, and it was really fun, really great. I wound up pushing myself to put myself more out there, and that's when I joined Start Playing, and I started professionally hosting Dungeons and Dragons games. Outside of Dungeons and Dragons, I am very much a big nerd, geek, whatever you want to call it. I love all manner of nerdy things such as Star Wars, Marvel, and pretty much anything that falls under that umbrella. I love paintballing. I love camping. Just something about being in the outdoors as well and kind of getting down in the dirt that it's also fun.
You classify yourself as a nerd, but then you just admitted that you touch grass, so
Yeah, I a little bit of enigma there, but you know, gotta find love for everything, including video games. Big video game person. Love all types of video games. I've got a backlog bigger than pretty much anything else I own, so I'm still trying to work on that. And my girlfriend actually is the one that keeps telling me that I can't buy any more video games until I finish playing the ones I have. So
girlfriends are replaceable. Video games are forever.
I can't let her hear me say that.
Well,
Nothing.
yep, since introductions are through, let's get into the first bit of new media. Let's talk about, well, here's the big topic that's really been irking me ever since it came out, Tasha's.
Yeah, this one was definitely tough. from a player standpoint, it added a lot of options, a lot of cool things. But from a GM standpoint or DM standpoint, it was a literal nightmare.
No kidding. Yeah. When you have the biggest thing that comes to mind for me when I think of Tasha's is the custom lineages, or rather the custom origins, I think they were called.
Yes.
Basically, a variant human where you can get a +2 to a single score, and skill, and a feat. Man,
Yeah, the benefits definitely stacked up, and there wasn't. It didn't. I don't want to purposely step out of line and say that Wizards of the Coast wasn't balancing anything when they did this, but it definitely feels like there weren't enough drawbacks for the positives you were receiving, and that's something that irks me a little bit as a DM because I definitely believe in people getting powerful items, but I definitely believe that if you're not earning that powerful item, there has to be some type of drawback or some sort of like balancing system to say, hey, yeah, you're getting the Vorpal Greatsword at level 5, but here's the drawback, it's cursed, stuff like that.
right? Yeah. Every time you swing it, it makes like a really loud rubber ducky noise, so you can never be stealthy or something like that.
Right, right. And
Yeah,
that's the kind of problem that comes into mind, at least for me as a GM, is my big thing is I've always got to try to find an equilibrium to the world for my players because I can't make it too easy on you guys, otherwise it just becomes unfun to play. Or if I make it too hard, then you're facing the same situation where, you just banging your head on a wall and it just becomes unfun to continue playing.
certainly. And here's another issue: is even if it is balanced for one of your players, like if you have one person who's playing one of these custom lineages, they allow you to take racial feats too, which are incredibly strong. Like a level 1 character that can pack Elven Accuracy, where you're rolling with triple advantage when you're getting surprise or flanking. That's kind of ridiculous, especially compared to, say, like a level 1 wizard in that same party. Or even a level 1 fighter. Like your +2 to ranged attack rolls from your fighting style and second wind does not stack up to triple advantage plus class features.
Right. Right, and a big thing that came from Tasha's was some of the class features and stuff that they brought in as well. And I will be honest, for the Artificer, there was a lot of buffing that happened here. The Artificer received a lot of boons that were like, "Ooh, that's kind of cool," but also kind of
Yes.
OP. And there,
Yep.
there was a lot of classes in here that received that love, that they might have needed, but at the same time, it didn't stop there. The buck didn't stop and say, "Hey, okay, that's good enough. That's great. Now they're in tune with other classes." Tasha's went ahead and was like, "Okay, well, since these classes didn't receive any love, let's go ahead and make them stronger than the rest of the classes."
Right, and I'm more than happy to see expanded spell lists, or even something like the rogue, where they got the steady aim, where on a bonus
Yes, that
action
was
they can give
awesome.
themselves advantage. Yeah, that's thematic with the rogue. It lets them get their sneak attack without having to dip into swashbuckler.
Correct. Yeah, definitely. And that was kind of like a big thing is like a lot of the perks and stuff they added and a lot of customizations was actually really cool and really good to see, but then they kind of just kept going. It didn't stop. It was like too much of a good thing, if you know what I mean.
Definitely. Yep, I can certainly see that. Um, when you're looking at also the customize your origin, where you can change out your ability scores at character creation, all of a sudden stuff where you're playing, what was it, hill dwarf, where you're getting the +1 HP per level, you can bring that in as a solid wizard because you can change out that +2 con +2 strength for +2 wisdom and +2 dexterity or something to buff up your armor class.
Yeah, definitely. For one of the games I run, the Sunday one, um, I believe it was. I'm trying to remember what Durin, maybe I think is the name he went by. He joined for one session and then decided it wasn't a good fit for him, so he unfortunately left. But he did join, and because I didn't have a specific type of race in there for him, a specific type of dwarf he was looking for, um, he actually chose the hill dwarf, but he chose the customize your origin, and he was able to swap around some of those skills to better fit his class. So I thought that was kind of cool, but it was also like he like really pushed getting like 18 on one of his ability scores with a point buy system, just from swapping around these ability score placements.
Right, and with custom ability scores, one of the things that was written that I think they omitted in Tasha's is that you have to choose different abilities for those ability score increases. So you can't substitute a +2 and a +1 for a +3 in one score. They had to be separate. And I don't remember if they added that verbiage into Tasha's. So
Right.
that could have definitely caused some big problems.
Right, and that's one of the big things for Dungeons and Dragons is typically it's played with paper and pencil. So there's are going to be games that are played where it's not on D and D Beyond. So there's no like thing to hold your hand and tell you, no, this is exactly how this works, or this is exactly why this is worded like this. A lot of time it just comes down to you being like, ooh, does that mean X, Y, and Z, or does that mean this? And then from there, you got to either ask your DM for clarification, who then also has to jump online and be like, "Ooh, that's a good question. Let me look it up." And it takes a little bit more time. So, you know, something I've come to notice as being a DM is that you've got to be very careful with your word choice in terms of Dungeons and Dragons, because there's a lot of rule lawyers out there who look at it and say, no, 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 it says this and it says this word specifically, which means that it's going to be this way, and so that's really big is Dungeons and Dragons. That's something they always, or Wizards of the Coast, sorry, always needs to kind of keep in the back of their mind is you have to be careful with how you word things.
Yes, definitely. And myself having been a rules lawyer at one point, I definitely can attest to the power of something being worded incorrectly or in a way that wasn't intended. Um, Man, I think it was the UA release of the Armor Artificer that was the issue, where their Thunder Gauntlets did not have charges on them. They were unlimited use, and they were just straight up D8 Thunder weapons. And
Yeah.
oh boy, mix that with I believe the Tempest Cleric, where they can knock people around when they deal thunder damage, and you had an incredibly strong person who could just slap people around the battlefield.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And I think actually it was me and you. I think it was the Sunday sessions where I ran my first campaign as a DM. That's where that first came up. Is I looked at it on D&D Beyond. I'm like, wait a second, this thing says charges. So how many of these uses when you were looking at the UA one, I believe, and
Yep.
so that's where that kind of disparity came into place. So yeah, definitely got to keep eye on word usage, and then a lot of the times, just always ask your DM. If it ever comes down to it, specify with him because he's not there to try and more times than not, I should say, he's not there to, or at least he shouldn't be there to like dash your hopes and dreams of having this super powerful character, but he definitely wants you to have fun and kind of find a good steady progression to get to that point so that way you enjoy the ride as well as the victory at the end.
Right, and that's a lot of the times the issue that I see is a lot of DMs and a lot of players too believe that it's a game where it's the DM versus the players, but in reality it's a narrative that's crafted by both the DM and the players. So it's
Right.
got to be fun for everybody involved.
Absolutely, 100%. That's why I love making homebrew types of games because it really allows me to craft a world and then it allows me to put my players into that world so it doesn't just feel like they're in somebody else's world playing a game. It feels like, their family is two villages over so they know that they can go there for a safe haven, and stuff like that, and that means a lot for me because I want you guys to have this story. I want you guys to enjoy yourselves and to enjoy your time playing my campaigns. So I definitely try to put in the effort to show that I'm definitely with you guys 100%. I want you guys to be super powerful, but I also want you guys to travel that path to get to that super powerful point because, it's an adventure and, that's half the fun.
Right. Well, their family was two villages over until it was burned down by a stray dragonborn.
Okay, well, you gotta add a little bit of flavor in there to, allow some discourse and some
Yeah,
fun
yeah, it
moments.
was one time. It was back in college. Yeah, I get it.
Oh man, I still can't believe that. So in our Sunday session, I had my father play with us because he's the original person that got me into D&D way back when, during the first iteration of D&D coming out. He busts out his old D&D set and we play, and I had a great time. Ever since then, that has always been it. Always put D&D as like a game in the back of my mind. And a couple of years ago, I finally found the courage to be like, all right, I'm gonna put myself out there and I'm gonna find a group and I'm gonna play Dungeons and Dragons, see how it is. And had a great time with my Friday friends. Three of them decided to come with me, and then I got my dad to come and play, and I hosted the Sunday session. And so my dad played a Dragonborn fighter with a greatsword, flame tongue greatsword. He absolutely loved it. It did massive amounts of damage. First time I've ever seen anybody roll 3 crits on a virtual tabletop. I've never seen that before until he showed up and totally destroyed my boss fight and stuff. But getting a little sidetracked, so he went and so another one of our players, she comes from a wood elf type of village that's full of like druids and stuff like that. And it turned out that her mom was kind of evil and kind of wicked. So when my players traveled back in time, they didn't know this at the time, but the wood elves were kind of that whole side was kind of racial or racist towards dragonborns, orcs, stuff like that. Um, so when they traveled back in time, they hadn't met. His name was Vern, and the group yet. So the he went into the village thinking, oh, I can rest up here, and everyone was being real mean to him. So he decided, you know, I'm just gonna kill everyone here. And we did some rolls, and he rolled really high, so he managed to burn down the entire village and everything.
Yep, he was the most wholesome murder hobo character that I have ever had the honor to play with. So much fun, very blunt and to the point person. Just he didn't speak often, but when he did, what came out of his mouth was just gold.
Oh man, and he's not the type of murder hobo that like literally just went around killing everybody he could. He would definitely listen to the party if the party was like, maybe that's not the best idea. He'd be like, fun, and stuff like that. And
Right.
so it made it nice because he still allowed the party to have their fun, do their things, have their RP moments. But when combat came around, he was the first to pick up his sword and be like, all right, just point me towards what I got to kill.
No kidding. Yeah.
Oh,
And of course, he had to roll those 3 crits on the session I wasn't able to make it.
yeah, that was so crazy. You guys were in the dungeon for the boss battle. It was and I believe it was a mind flare. I'm trying to remember which one, but I had so he was like a sorcerer mind flare, and there were two other mind flayers in there that were a little bit lower CR. And he went straight up to the boss, and he used his 2 attacks per his action, being a fighter, and then he action surged and used 2 more attacks. And out of those 4 attacks, 3 of those were straight crits in a row. And at that point, I'm like, all right, well, if you're gonna keep rolling like this all night, the boss is dead.
Yeah.
There's nothing, I could do about that because you got a flame tongue greatsword, which is 4d6 every time, times 2 times damage because I do either 2 times the damage or roll double the dice, add double the modifier. Um, but he would just roll double the damage on 4d6 after every crit. And then, his last attack, even if it wasn't a crit, the bad guy was already either dead or at 1 HP at that point. So he totally obliterated the floor boss. And oh man, what a nightmare because I was like, I don't have too much more planned. I thought this was going to last at least another 30 minutes to an hour or something.
Yeah, and then just watching the HP meter just drop tick, 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 tick.
Man, I felt so bad too because I was the one that told him like, you do have an action surge. If you want to use it, you're already on a roll with 2 crits. So he's like, yeah, why not? And I'll be honest, Vern never ever ever used the action surge unless I brought it up. So that's why I kept bringing it up to him. Because like I said, he comes from an older style of Dungeons and Dragons play, so there's a lot of new concepts, new features and stuff, and he's just, I don't want to say a dinosaur stuck in his ways, but he definitely kind of just prefers to, okay, well, let me know my main attack, let me know this, what do I got to do to heal?
Yeah, a lot of these newer editions really did add a lot. I could not honestly have seen him play like Pathfinder or third or like 3.5. Those were incredibly
Oh yeah.
complicated systems that just like bloated D&D. And I say that in the nicest way possible because I adore 3.5 casters.
Yeah,
But
I've always heard that they were really good additions, you know, and really like in-depth additions. But it was like one of those things where if you get into them, it's like it's some consuming stuff because you know there's just so much.
yeah, the biggest issue with them is you think that power creep on casters is strong in fifth edition, where like fighters are linear, casters are exponential. That's that was the problem with 3.5 is casters started linear like fighters.
No
So they
kidding.
had yeah, they had a good early game and an just stupid late game. That was yeah,
Yeah.
give a caster downtime and you could make him nigh unkillable because you could have like prepared spells and charms. Unlike 5th edition, where you can't really save spells unless you have stuff like an Arcane Abeyance bead from the Chronergist Wizard or Glyphs of Warding from other wizards, clerics, I think.
No
Um,
kidding. That's
yep.
insane because like thinking about it and stuff, you know, I've always wanted to kind of dip my toes into other editions and other types of games. For instance, I actually am hosting so someone commissioned me to host a custom game for him and his friends, and I've been doing that. And he actually came up to me the other day after the session. He's like, "Hey, you know, would you be cool with hosting a special type of birthday party, Dungeons and Dragons? It's not going to be till November, but um, it's going to be kind of a tabletop game and stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. You know what do you mean by special?" And he's like, "Well, it's for my girlfriend, but she wants to do a Harry Potter type game." And I'm like, "Oh, I think it was called Wands and Wizards or something like that." And I was like, I have no knowledge of this, but I can definitely do some research and figure things out, and I'm actually looking forward to it because it's a whole new kind of beast to tackle. Still uses a lot of the template of fifth edition, but it's something totally different, you know, and it's something I wanted to try. I want to definitely expand my horizon of game systems. I know, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a lot of really good game systems out there that, you know, it sucks that you don't see them played often. Older systems, even like Traveler. Oh man, Traveler was a lot of fun. Very adaptable to anything that you would need. You could play basically any generation of game inside of Traveler and not have issues with it. They had support for futuristic games like laser weapons and stuff. They had support for older style games with medieval weapons. They had a whole bunch of different like you could build different spaceships or like water ships, land vehicles. That is one of the forgotten gems of RPGs, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's something that, you know, as you said, you don't see too many people playing that often, and that's something I look at on start playing. You know, is I'm always looking at games and stuff and being like, oh, you know, okay, this that. You know, a lot of it's 5e and stuff. You know, sometimes I'll see Pathfinder. I think it's 2.5 or Pathfinder 2.
Yeah,
Um,
Pathfinder 2.
that's what it is, and I'm just sitting there and I'm looking. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. But you don't see anything like, oh, Warhammer 40K and everything else and Star Wars and stuff. You know, it's like there's some really cool game types out there that I definitely, you know, put some money down to try out just to see what it was like. You know, I know
Right.
we talked about. I think I talked about it with Josh, one of the other people in our Friday night campaigns, and he was talking about a Destiny type of game type, and you know I played the heck out of Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. Oh, thank you. And you know I really enjoyed those types of games because it was a cool concept to me. You know, I never really got behind their whole money situation and how they did their cosmetics and their pay stuff and kind of how they release their DLCs and stuff. But like, you know, a D&D game with the concept of the lore and story they had, that'd be really cool. Where the concept is your characters are meant to die over and over and over and over again, you know, and that's a really cool concept to me because it means like you guys don't have to be afraid of death and you guys get to do all these cool things and try out these cool like um ways of doing things like, oh, we could take the elevator or we could all just jump off this 800-foot wall,
That's always an option, right? It
you
sounds a
know.
bit like Dark Souls. Am I far off on assuming that?
Uh, no, I don't think it's going to be too far off. The only thing is, I think you just keep everything after you die. I know there's certain restricted areas where if you die, you have to go all the way back to a checkpoint. But
Okay.
for the most part, when you die, you keep your inventory, you keep your money, you keep all this stuff. So it's literally just a fun way of going about and just acting a fool, you know.
Yeah, that certainly does sound like fun.
But
And does that tie into the campaign 2 ideas of having multiple characters, or is it just one character that just kind of refuses to die?
so as long as you've got your ghost, is what they call it, and it's basically a little sphere, kind of hexagonal thing that kind of just stays in your backpack at all times. But as long as you've got that with your character could always be revived, at least in the game. I haven't looked too far into like how it's actually structured in terms of the respawn and everything. I just know that that was kind of like their pitch point was die, respawn, get back in there. Die, respawn, get back in there. Die, respawn, get back in there, you know?
Okay.
Um, so it was like a really cool concept, and I know there's a lot of plays on the 5e system. So I also know there's a Borderlands themed one. Um, and I know there's a few others. You know, obviously you got Star Wars and stuff. And a lot of these can be played in other systems, but you know, like these are like the cool things that I want to see. You know, I want to try them. You know, I want to see what exactly how much it is like 5e or isn't. You know,
Right, because when you're adding mechanics like even to take the Star Wars for example, like the Force, 5e is pretty well structured in what actions you can and can't take. But when you're given something like the Force, which is essentially just telekinesis, to my understanding, I'm not a huge Star Wars like
right?
fan per se. But when you're given something like telekinesis, you can do basically anything with telekinesis. Like that's a very open book that you have to be able to kind of rule with on the fly, like the shape water incidents that keep arising somehow. I have no idea about those.
Uh huh. Yeah. Okay. I know it's your favorite mechanic. Let's be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, that's definitely like one of the cool things is like that's why I like 5e because it's got such a broad like spectrum. So like, you know, for instance, for force or telekinesis, there are a few spells that deal with that or you know, like the telekinetic mind shove that you can get as a feat and um you know, there's a few spells, you know, like say for instance, what is it? Thunder wave
Yep.
could be used as a force spell, like a force push almost, you know. So there's definitely ways to structure it. I at least from what I've seen, but it's definitely got to be done by brains much larger than mine because I don't think I would have the ability to sit down and spend hours just grueling over detail after detail.
Yeah, I can't imagine how long it would have taken to set up a rule set that's somewhat balanced, even. Because there's still a lot of non Force users in the Star Wars universe. How do you balance a game that can include them in a world where something as strong as the Force would exist?
Right, and you know, there's especially with the newer or Star Wars movies that came out, you know, there was some that were strong enough with the force that could stop a blaster bolt in midair before it hit somebody. And you know, that's you're kind of playing with that gray area now of like, okay, so the force users could basically just make themselves invincible to everything, and now you got to find a way to balance that with just the people who are using the guns.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the same issue that even D&D is coming back to is with releases of subclasses like the Renegade Fighter, the League of Legends themed fighter subclass, or even the Gunslinger, the Matthew Mercer fighter subclass. when you introduce something like guns into Dungeons and Dragons, you're adding a whole new, like, that's a whole new era of warfare and something that old weapons can't really compete with.
Right, and then it gets to the point like if you're not playing a module and you are playing a homebrew type of campaign, now you've got to figure out how far you letting your players push that boundary. Do they learn to make dynamite? Do they learn to make like actual grenades with shrapnel in them? Like what is the boundary there? Because they can, if players want to, they can, at least from my standpoint, they can be as creative as they want to as long as they follow that kind of process of getting to the point where they are able to make magazines for handguns and stuff like that.
Yep. And that's the biggest issue that I found with like advancing a Dungeons and Dragons game in technology is you have to be able to rationalize that your character would think of something like that, because it's super easy. Like, guns are quite commonplace, especially around where I live.
Oh
Um,
yes, I
yeah, they
agreed.
are just everywhere. So it's common knowledge, essentially, how they work and how they're created. But back in whenever your Dungeons and Dragons campaign takes place, like 13th century, 14th century, medieval times, that kind of stuff just doesn't come to you.
Right, and that's the thing is being able to separate the metagame knowledge that a player has and what their character would actually know and be able to think of on their own. And that's where it kind of gets like to this really blurred line of, okay, well, are these characters even going to think about that type of stuff? Are they even going to consider the spring reload of a magazine versus manually putting in a bullet every time they shoot? Like, how far are your characters willing to push the envelope, and how far are you going to let them push that envelope with all the new stuff coming into it? And that's what is the new book coming out? I think it's for the monsters. It's like the metaverse monsters or something like that. I'm trying to,
I can look that up right quick.
yeah, because I also saw that as well, and I'm like, okay, well now you're coming out with a bunch of new features for monsters and stuff as well. So, what exactly is the kind of where's the cutoff point for where 5e stops its expansion? When does it stop being 5e, and when do you start working on a new edition? Because I think 5e, at least from my standpoint, because I came into this in 5e, 5e has got a very, very expansive line of books. I can't say whether another edition has more books and more options and more variables. Obviously, there are more nitty gritty, but I'm saying like actual just edition after edition of book being put out for fifth edition.
Yep, and that much I don't really know either because I never got the chance to play through a full 3.5 game or like meet somebody who had all the source material. Um, but I could pretty confidently say that there are plenty of other editions out there, mainly because they've been just out for longer, that have had more source material behind them. But 5e has, I can almost guarantee, been the most profitable edition of Dungeons and Dragons due to them kind of, for lack of a better term, dumbing the system down to make it more widely accessible for everybody.
Yeah, and a lot more appealing with, basically, oh, you got a creative mind, you'll love Dungeons and Dragons, which is true since the beginning of time. If you've got creativity like no other, you love Dungeons and Dragons. You might even love being a DM because that's where it falls into place for me. Is I've tried doing where I write books. I've tried recording stories. I've tried music. I've tried directing my own machinima using Halo, stuff like that. And I couldn't really find my creative niche on where I really belonged. And then, I DM for the first time. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. It's really easy to tell my story and have other people enjoy that story and kind of make it their own as well. This is awesome. And that's where
Right.
I kind of came in and just started running with it. And now I've made like, I have, I think, 12 different types of campaign templates. And then I've got one, two, three custom actual campaigns with storylines and stuff like that. I just found. All right, so it's called Monsters of the Multiverse.
Yep, I just found it as well.
Yeah. For players
Compre-
includes over 30 playable races. Jesus Christ, that is a
yep,
lot.
my description reads a comprehensive resource for players and dungeon masters alike, containing over 30 updated player races.
Okay.
So it may not or it may not be new releases. And a massive bestiary with over 250 redesigned monsters and stat blocks.
Okay, so I mean, technically, I guess the monsters would be new if they're redesigned with new stat blocks. That could definitely be a whole different thing. But yeah, mine just says includes over 30 playable races. At least that's what it says on D&D Beyond. What I'm reading right from the thing. Um,
Yeah, I could see this being quite confusing, honestly, for the veteran player when you've played enough games that you know, like, off the top of your head, what the eye beams on a beholder do,
right.
or what it is that a demi-lich looks like. Stuff like that. Like, you can kind of get, like, confident and settled into, I'm very familiar with the bestiary of base 5e, and then you get smacked in the side of the head with something like this, and all of a sudden, surprise, the beholder now has, instead of like a petrification ray, it has like a Tasha's hideous laughter ray or something silly like that.
Yeah, or it like freezes you instead of petrifies you or something, you know. And
Right.
that's where it's going to tote the line for a lot of veteran players is, you know, they've got to either acknowledge that this is coming out and be like, hey, you know, that's cool. I want to be challenged. I want to see something new. I want to be a player that um, doesn't know what is going to happen next. Or if you are just like, hey, I enjoy sitting in the seat that I sit in, it's built on the knowledge I know. I just want to stay kind of in my lane type of deal. That's cool too, but you got to kind of definitely know where your DM stands with this because, like I said, your DM, half his job is balancing and making sure you guys are constantly engaged in the game. And so this would probably help a lot of DMs. It's going to be a lot of homework in terms of kind of learning and making sure that you're up to date on everything. But I could definitely see it being a type of thing that kind of it's like, oh, let's just stir the pot up a little bit and here you go. And now all of a sudden, all these players have this new monsters to fight and learn about and everything else.
Yeah, the example that comes to mind to me is the game Monster Hunter World, where it builds you up as like a beginner hunter, and you're getting used to fighting these monsters. And then all of a sudden, towards probably like the 1/3 of the way through the game mark, you get just sideswiped by like these newer, more powerful versions of the same monsters showing up, and they have different abilities and different attack patterns that you have to completely relearn.
Yeah, Anna actually, my significant other, plays Monster Hunter World on PlayStation, and she enjoys the ever living heck out of it. But she's gotten all the way to the end, and she fights these like end bosses now and stuff like that. And I'm looking at it, and I'm watching them go at this, and it's just like, wow, this is insane. And then I watch her fight somebody else, and it's just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. There's no two similarities between how these two fight. You know, one is constantly rolling around on the battlefield, the other one jumps up and flies off, and then you got to chase it down. And
Yeah, the rolling enemies I've died to more than my fair share of times.
oh yeah, no, I would be in that same book. I'm definitely the type of player that is I don't want to say button masher, but I definitely like to use like whatever will give me a lot of damage by hitting a lot of buttons really quickly.
Sure.
So, you know, for instance, the first thing I chose when I tried Monster Hunter World was the double swords, the double blades.
Yep,
Uh,
dual blades.
yep, and you know, I'd go out there and I loved it. I was like sing 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 sing, just hitting, and you know, I realized that you know you got to put a little bit more skill into it. You got to dodge. You got to kind of block. You got to sharpen your tools and stuff. And I just yeah, I came to the conclusion that I'm not great at this game, and I probably won't be.
Yeah, as much as I don't like to admit it, I'm still very new to the concept of blocking,
Yeah.
as I main the ranged weapons, so I usually don't have to worry about getting hit. Heavy bowgun, where It's your move super slow, your hits deal more damage, but for some reason your dodges throw you significantly further than with other weapons. Yeah, it's
Okay.
not exactly sensical to me, but it feels a lot better to play with.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's something I looked at. I was like, I'm getting messed up being up on the front lines and not blocking or dodging. So maybe I go with this chain gun back here and I just shoot from the back. And I realized that there's like a whole aggro system. So the more damage you do, like the more aggro you pull, and it doesn't matter if you're ranged, it comes after you. And I'm like, oh well, maybe I'm not great at this
Yup.
game.
Yeah, and it's like it's good that they're introducing things like this where you have to balance like the damage you're doing versus the damage of your tanks and other mechanics like that. It's certainly not new person friendly in my opinion, though. I don't feel like their base media or tutorials really do a good job of going over that.
Yeah, and that's something I've noticed about a lot of games coming out recently is they're following the Dark Souls esque type of game style where it's basically hit, roll around, block, roll around, hit, and stuff like that. Which, by all means, if it works, it works. But I kind of miss the older style of games where you were kind of a tank, so you could sit there and you could deal some damage. Yeah, you had to jump around a little bit, but like for the most part, you could tank a few hits. Now it's like you get hit twice and you're like, okay, well, you dead, bud.
Yep, I certainly agree. I grew up playing well, not grew up, I should say. More recently, I've been playing games like MOBAs a lot. That's my preferred genre aside from tabletop, and that is usually you're able to tank like between 10 and 20 hits on even the squishiest of characters before you really have to consider the consequences of that. So switching into a game where one hit can stun lock you into a whole combo is very drastic.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know. I guess I just come from like I grew up with shooters, so obviously you got Call of Duty, you got Halo, but for me it was Gears of War as well, and um, what's another one that Doom was another big one for me. Uh, these are all games I grew up where you were kind of a badass and you went around just obliterating your enemies. You had the power, the punch behind your guns and stuff, and really it just came down to that quick reflex. So you didn't have to dodge. There was no such thing as dodge or block in Call of Duty or Halo or anything like that. It was just shoot first, you win. That's all there is to it. And so moving from that to well, you hit first. You still got to hit him about 47 more times, so you got to roll in between each time he hits, and it's just, if that game style works for you guys, great. Have fun. It is not my specialty. I do not do well.
Right. And even games like Halo, I can't speak for the Call of Duty franchise, but games like Halo, they've started to introduce mechanics where you're significantly worried about getting hit once or twice. Halo Infinite comes to mind with their newer boss fight mechanics, where you can get basically one tapped by an
Yeah.
energy sword wielding elite, and you have to like really play around, dodging around with their grappling hooks or like deploying active, or not
Oh,
active
yeah.
camo, deployable covers.
Yeah, no, that was definitely something new that kind of came into Halo, and I think personally they did a decent job with it because it felt like as a veteran player of Halo where I'm used to those Halo 3 mechanics where you're slow as a fucking slug, there's no sprint, but you just kind of bulky moving around, you could take some shots to more of a yeah, you could take a couple hits, you don't want to take too many, but hey, try this grapple hook out. And at first I didn't use it at all when fighting, not a single time. I used it to get around the map, and then I started having fun using it getting around the map, and I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty fun. And one day I accidentally grabbed a fusion coil, brought it to my hand. I'm like, oh, I'm just holding this fusion coil. I hit right trigger, it throws the fusion coil. I'm like, that's awesome. That is so
Yeah.
cool, because I had been going around and I would lead the bosses or the enemies towards a fusion coil, blow it up, and now I'm like, this is going to be totally different. And of course, I failed the first 3 times I tried it because it's something new I haven't done before. But then after about the fourth time, I was able to grab the fusion coil and toss it before it gets shot in my hand, and it would land on them, explode, and light them on fire or blow them up or whatever. And it was a cool mechanic I was able to start actually getting around into. The only problem is outside of campaign, it is really hard to get the grapple hook. A lot of the times you're just sitting there with a sprint.
Yeah. No, I definitely see that. I haven't played much of the multiplayer, honestly. I just started with the campaign. I was convinced by a friend to grab it and was very satisfied with the end result. Um, so I can't really attest to having to find the grapple hook in multiplayer per se. But with it in the campaign, it introduces a whole new direction to the way you can move. Because even in Halo 4, there was no, well, I shouldn't say no, there was almost no vertical movement in any Halo game prior to this. You were stuck on the floor and you had to dodge just in 2 axes of movement. But now that you can fling yourself up into the air and you can like grapple into vehicles and stuff like that, that makes not only does it make existing mechanics like hijacking vehicles, like hijacking Grunt's ghost, for instance, like that used to be my downfall. I could never get it right. I would always get splattered. But now I can just stand to the side and grapple to the ghost. Like
Oh
it
yeah,
feels like it dumbed down the game a little bit, but also added just so many new dimensions of movement and
right.
depth to the game.
Yeah, it definitely brought this whole new kind of almost life to this game. It didn't change a lot other than allowing you to move in a different direction, and it made the entire game feel completely new. They were able to take basically what was, for lack of better terms, a design of Halo 1 and 2, and kind of how the Forerunner structures were and stuff. They brought all that over, and they're like, okay, well, let's just add a vertical movement to this, like a really good vertical movement. In comes the grapple hook, and now all of a sudden you're playing this Halo 1 2 style game, and it's like, oh, this feels like something totally different, Like, I've played Halo 1 and 2, and this feels like the nostalgia of it with a totally different vector of movement.
Right, and that's something I really didn't expect from a new 343 release. Well, forgive me if I'm wrong here, because I can never remember if I believe that Bungie sold to 343 during,
Yeah, that's correct.
yep, ODST, and then Reach was their first take. But yeah, watching 343 and like trying to grasp what the original Halos were about, and who knew that it would be something as small as a grappling hook that could basically redesign your franchise.
Yeah, no kidding. I think that's going to become like a staple of their games moving forward. It's got to be at this point. You're not going to put this into a game and have it become like this much of a thing that was hyped up and built around, and then just take it out the next game. That's something that a lot of Halo fans saw going from Halo 5 to Halo Infinite. It was that kind of transition of that really gray area where there's a lot of lore left behind. There was a lot of stuff not talked about. So they cut a lot of stuff, but I think that they're kind of basically as like the phoenix does, where it burns away and from the ashes springs anew, is basically what Halo Infinite was. And I think they have a lot of promising directions they could take it in.
Yep, that was the one thing that before I purchased the game, when I was looking at reviews and stuff, that was the one thing that was common among every review is that it basically pretends that Halo 5 didn't happen, aside from like a subtle nod to Cortana's rampancy, and then they just kind of brush it under the rug, like, oh, then she just like kind of destroyed shit after Atriox got to her.
Right.
Uh, which also, this was the first time I realized, or like since you told me, this was the first time since then that I realized your B was named Atriox after this character.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So in our Friday session, my original character, whose name was Gage, because I'm not very original at creating names, um, he was a Warforged artificer, and he created a little B, and I named it Atriox after the Halo Wars bad guy in Halo Wars 2, um, because it was, I don't know, just felt like something I should do as a Halo fan, kind of my homage. And then Brock also had a familiar. If you want to go ahead and give him Ava's rundown.
Yeah, she was very chaotic. Yeah, basically think of the trope of a chaotic, stupid character, and you got Ava's personality. Um, she was known for walking around with a very large penis in her bag of holding, and nobody knew where she got it from or how long it's been there, but we knew that it smelled. And she had a habit of just like disappearing and then reappearing at either the best or the worst times. It really depended on your perspective of the events. Let's see, what else did she do? She accidentally created a half of a Draco Lich and then set it loose on a town. That was a fun day.
Oh yeah, Atriox loved that. He was just like he was there for the ride. My
Yep.
little B buddy was all about it.
Yeah, we created the what was it? The rune of erection. That's what it was.
It changed it from Rune of Detection to Rune of Erection.
Yep. Oh man, good times.
Oh yeah, our Friday sessions are chaotic, dumb, funny.
Oh yeah, just the dumbest things you can think of is basically what we thought of during that game. It's super lighthearted. The DM is very laid back and casual, and if we can like even remotely explain it, then he'll allow it in game.
Right, and
It's
it creates some of the greatest moments. Some ones that come to mind almost immediately was dropping about 1,000 war forges on a clock tower. Let's see, we got the railgun.
Yeah, who
Um,
can forget the railgun? I mean, what the
on
hell?
two, we had two krakens that technically we quote unquote defeated.
Yeah, I mean, we stuffed one in a bag, and then we did kill the other one with the railgun.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Almost had one of our players get taken over by some sort of like mind parasite or something like that.
Yeah, it was a little leech that was based on like a mind flayer. I don't remember what he called them. I think they were just referred to as leeches, but they were like tiny intellect devourers, basically.
Yeah, and I knew the moment we saw those things near that pool, I was like, okay, we got to evaporate all of them. Any one of these escapes, and we're done for. It is
Yep.
over.
And then we had a player who shall not be named, because it was me, wanted to keep one as a pet for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
That's some. That's like the trope of our group is we find like the worst type of bad guy, and we're like, okay, you could be our friend. Yeah, let's be friends. We
yeah.
got
Why don't you explain Bob the Beholder?
our blinged out beholder that has joined us. Do you accept the quest?
Yep. So
Uh,
basically, we had a side mission where the entire it was uh like flashbacks into our characters' backstories, just to like give little insights as to who each other were. And at the end of this, we were sent through a mansion. I'm trying to remember the exact event or the exact order of events here.
okay, so for Bob the Beholder, what we were supposed to be doing was having a relaxing spa day, but
Oh
knowing our
right.
group, we could never relax with anything. So we went into a. So I guess there were multiple doors where we could do different types of quests, and we so happened to pick like one of the best doors for the best like rewards we could have gotten. The whole time we were at this spa, we were totally sus of anyone that worked there, because that wizard just and we'll leave this stuff the details for another time, but um, and so we went through this like dimensional door, and we started doing this little side quest, mini quest, like oh this that and wiffle ball bat, and the first the first moment that we get in there, some lady approaches us and says, "Oh, please help my husband in the tower." And we're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we could probably do that. And she's like, do you accept the quest? And then immediately we were all like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's a little
Yeah,
sus. There's something
being a
going
little
on here.
too careful about the wording here. Back
Right,
to that rules lawyer bullshit.
And with me and you being us, we were just like, nah, there's some fuckery here. We ain't falling for this. So we we just started yelling back at her, do you accept the quest? Do you accept the quest? And we got to the point where I think it was one of the guards for the castle were like, do you accept the quest? And they're like, what? And it went to back and forth, and then eventually we're like, you have to say that you accept in order for us to leave. And they're like, oh, okay, we accept the quest. They fucking vanish. And
Yup.
anybody that accepted the quest would literally disappear from this magic realm. And so we didn't know where they popped up, but we had an idea that maybe they popped back up in the other world because honestly, that's probably where we would have been sent if we accepted the quest. So we get up to the tower, we're scaling the side of the tower, we get into the building, and there's a beholder there. And we're like, whoa, 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 this doesn't have to get ugly. And we're like, Bob, do you accept the quest? And Bob's like, I'm just here to kill people. And we're like, Bob, you can kill hundreds of people if you accept the quest. And Bob's like, well, I guess then I accept the quest. Bob disappeared. We finished it out. We totally. I think we asked the tower, "Do you accept the quest?"
Yes, and
And
we sent the tower out. How did
and
the tower answer again?
I don't remember, man. I honestly don't. But it was so crazy. And then we just started free falling. We're like, okay, well, we need to get out of here. And we found our way back, and there's just carnage everywhere. Everything's awry. There's a giant tower on top of the. It was the fairies' kind of working lodge or whatever. We dropped the tower on top of it, and we're just all sitting there, and we're like, "Wow, that was crazy." And we got Bob the Beholder as one of our companions, who now follows us through hell. I should have mentioned that we were in hell during all of this.
Yeah, I'm sure that wasn't a euphemism for the DM, wanting to send us to hell or anything like that.
Yeah, no kidding. But we just got this really bad knack. We've got a carriage driver that shoots like magic missiles and all types of magic spells out of it, and the carriage driver's constantly trying to sell us. We've got a hound master with all his hounds. He's currently managing a part of hell for us. Like our Friday nights are absolutely wild. Me and Brock will sit down, we'll do a recap video, and we'll try our best to recap all the events that led up to now. And during our Tiefling talks, we'll get together and we'll discuss last session's events and what we do on Sundays as well.
Yeah, I can very safely assume that we are not going to be able to recap what goes on during these sessions.
Oh yeah,
It
no,
is.
we're gonna have to like blur the image, as it were, quite a bit, and then we'll just have to kind of be like, okay, so basically what happened is we murdered an orphanage. That is all. Goodbye.
Yeah, to to put it lightly, we destroyed the orphanage.
Yeah, we won't. We'll see how crazy it gets, because honestly, Friday nights are something else. They're a whole while and bunch all their own.
Yep, we'll save you the details of how the cat distracted the wizard, but he distracted the wizard.
Or seduce the door.
Yes, that was one of the tropes. Is one of my characters had to go away for a quote unquote personal quest to actually this was Cayman the Warforged and the one who had the familiar named Ava. And Ava was getting sick, so Cayman had to go on a personal quest to try and, long story short, heal her. But I had a fill-in character that was Alexander Hamilton, which is a totally original name. Yep, and basically his whole shtick was that he was an Asimar who was permanently transformed into a cat for backstory reasons, like being a spy and getting caught. And so he just lived life as a cat and had cat-like urges during most of this campaign. So like knocking shit off desks at the worst time, just falling asleep.
Oh yeah.
Generally being a lazy twat. And man, it led to some of the best interactions. Um, they were also a bard too, which is just like insult to injury. When you add a horny bard trope to a literal cat, it it's cursed.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And
Yep.
now from now on, the running joke is always, if we ever reach a locked door, we're like, all right, let's get Ham to seduce the door.
Yep. Good times.
Oh
And
man.
that door is still in the campaign, and we're not married yet, but have actually officiated the wedding for the next character that Gage played, whose name was Vol, and his girlfriend.
Yeah. So my original character was named Gage, very unoriginal. Warforged, brother of Cayman, who Brock played. This is the first time I've gotten into a 5e campaign. I reached out. I'm like, hey, are there any other Warforges that would like to collaborate on our story? And Brock reached out and said, he was playing one as well, and we decided to become the Wagner brothers, and built a whole backstory upon it. And just got up to some fuckery. While Cayman voluntarily left to go and help his familiar Ava, Gage died. He actually sacrificed himself to save the party, do some heroic deeds and this and that, and a wiffle ball bat. And that's where my second character came in, Vol, who think Alucard from Castlevania. That's basically Vol's kind of MO. He's a half vampire, half tiefling, and so he's kind of got the whole edge going for him. He is a rogue edge guy, edge lord, and so it's one fun event after another. And yeah, so my character actually found love in the campaign, and we had Ham the cat be the official kind of what do you even call that, the minister or the
Ordained priest, yeah.
there you go. And that was a we got married in hell, in an alternate dimension, so that was fun. And now I'm just fighting my way to meet up with Gage, because we found out that Gage was alive as a Warforged down in hell, fighting the good fight, and really excited to see that next kind of episode kind of unfold, because I got myself a nice new voice and everything for Gage, and I'm eager to try it out, see what the party thinks.
Yep. And it'll be very different because we still have, was it two of the original members of the. Actually, no, it's just Cora now.
Cora is the only original member, but there are two people that know of Gage,
Right.
which would be
Um,
Vol and Cora. But yeah,
yep. And since Cayman's still out right now, unfortunately, he won't be able to meet Gage unless there's some tie-in events, but we haven't really discussed. I at least haven't discussed this with the DM yet, as far as being able to meet again before he's sent off.
right, and that's something that I've also been talking to Chris, our DM, about. Is there going to be a way for me to get like an actual voice message to Cayman? Because I feel like if Cayman can't come to me, a voice message would be a lot more personal than just relaying a message through Vol or Cora or somebody, because then you kind of get the full sense of hearing his voice, and then you got that memento to keep with you.
Right. Because we were able to at least, or you were able to give us gifts at the very end,
Right,
to kind of remember you by, but it would be nice to reconcile, to say the least. But
right.
we'll definitely have to see how things go.
Yeah, because I think we left off right at the part where we're on the final island and we can hear what sounds like a war being raged or something, or like a battle going on between the demons and unknown secondary party.
Well, we know what the secondary party is. It's
Right.
the Void, but
Is it the Void or is it the Angels?
my understanding is that it's or the Void was coming back because one of the players who had to dip out quite a while ago, playing a character named Matsui, was out of game, we know that they were supposed to return as soon as we left Hell, and they were the vessel of the void.
Gotcha, gotcha. See, I thought it was because angels and demons because originally when we were fighting with the dragon, I think it was, there was the party of angels, which I think you played as since Ham was dead at this point.
Yeah,
Um, another story for another time. But yeah, so that's why I thought originally it was going to be like the angels or Asimar with Gage versus like the demons and stuff. Which is what was like scaring me originally because I'm like, okay, well, we just made friends with all these demons. We conquered a level of hell. We own a level of hell now. So I kind of don't want to just throw all that away after we put in all that effort. You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah,
Um, but you know, it is what it is. It's only technically been an in-game week in terms of the game, but in reality, I think we've been in hell for what 5 months, 6 months.
yeah. It's been a very long time. We've also missed, unfortunately, quite a few sessions.
Yeah, and you know, I totally get it. You know, life comes up and stuff like that. You know, that was Chris's kind of one rule is, you know, when life comes up, it comes up. Don't try to fight it so that way you can have a game going. You know, life comes up, take care of it because you
Right.
never know if you'll have another chance for that. There's always another time to play D&D though.
Yeah, I mean, we'll always be around for sure.
Hopefully, knock on wood, fingers crossed.
Yeah, no kidding.
Um, But yeah, I'd say that was a good kind of first podcast episode. I mean, we covered quite a few different things, and that's kind of par for the course. Is you know we're just going to be kind of talking about a bunch of different things, rambling on about others, and hanging out, having a good time.
Yeah, bit of a somber note, but I think that that wraps things up nicely.
Oh yeah, that is a bit of a somber note. Dang. Hold on. Here we go.
We could pull up a cat video or something. I don't know.
Here we go. Yeah, no. That new Spider-Man. Uh, what was it? Far From Home? No Way Home? In
No Way Home.
No Way Home. Awesome.
Yep.
10 out of 10. Best movie ever seen. So wicked. So cool.
Yep. I have to say 9 out of 10. It felt a little endgame resemblant in their fan service, but I feel like
That's
it was
fair.
all well put. There's a lot of very valid callbacks. Feel like Tobey Maguire cracking, or sorry, Andrew Garfield cracking Maguire's back was probably my favorite callback of the whole movie. But
Yeah, that was funny.
yeah, that's coming from somebody who preferred the Garfield Spider-Man over the Maguire Spider-Man.
Yeah, you know, I actually did really like the Garfield Spider-Man, and the at least the first one was really good. The second one really felt muddled in kind of how they were doing it. It felt like they were instead of developing the story, it felt like they were just trying to set up for a third release. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
and that's no fault of Garfield
oh,
himself though, because
by no means, he played that character amazingly. You know, he played the Peter Parker that kind of was an outcast, but you know, definitely had the brains, had the knowledge, but he was still not like center of attention, all star track athlete type of deal.
yeah, I think the best way I've seen it put is that Tobey Maguire puts in a good Peter Parker, where he's nerdy and really doesn't fit in with anyone else, whereas Garfield puts in a good Spider-Man, where
Right.
he's quippy and active and like actually shows that he has the capabilities.
Yeah, and the Tom Holland Spider-Man was kind of that Marvel Universe Spider-Man. Like he fit really well for the Marvel Universe's Spider-Man. You know what I mean?
Right.
The other two, I don't think would have fit well in there. You know, he was definitely young enough to be that um, happy-go-lucky kind of kid who just kind of from Brooklyn is just kind of does his thing. You know, and it's really like a shows the youth of Spider-Man, but it also brings him into the Avengers early on to kind of get that relationship there. So it was kind of it was nice seeing each of them come together and then how they interacted with each other. And you know, like a really cool part was that you know Toby talking about how he organically makes spider webs from his body, and the other two were like, "What? That's so crazy!"
Yep. Everybody getting grossed out when he actually displayed it.
Yeah, and it's It was a good movie. It was a good movie in terms of the Spider-Verse. I think it did a lot of justice in terms of stuff like that. And I think upon doing this, they left a lot of doors open for future endeavors and future kind of places for Spider-Man to go.
Yes, very excited to see Miles Morales enter the Marvel Spider Verse.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely see where all that goes. I wouldn't even be I wouldn't be closed-minded to like the female Spider-Man. Was it the Gwen? Um,
Yep, Spider Gwen.
yep, that would be cool. Definitely cool to see that. See it all come together. Um, and then it nothing immediate, but I definitely want to see in the future at some point another like collab of two Spider-Men kind of coming together. Like that would it would be cool again to see a Spider-Man 3 for Andrew Garfield after the events of him coming back, and then like there's a quick ripple in time where he could see Toby or Tom Holland. Like that'd be really cool to see.
Right, like end of Spider Verse, where Gwen's able to peer through and pop into Miles's room.
Right. Yeah, like that was really cool, and something I'd like to see for future endeavors.
All right, well that puts a much nicer bow on this
Yeah, there
this
we
first
go.
episode
There
of
we
the
go. Just
podcast.
added another minute or two and made it seem a little bit more lively than the somber note we left off of.
No kidding.
All right, well, that will wrap it up then. Thanks for stopping by, guys. This has been Tiefling Talks with Gage and Brock. We will see you next week.
Yep, take care, everybody.